Hello and welcome to the very first episode of The Gilmore The Merrier. The Gilmore The Merrier? I'm still working out the whole title bit. I'm going to be so honest with you. You'll see when this episode's out. For those of you who don't know, which you really should if you're going to be here, I'm going to be honest. Gilmore Girls was a TV show that ran in the early 2000s. It stars Lauren Graham as the titular character Lorelai, and her daughter, also Lorelai Gilmore, but Rory, played by Alexis Bledel, who you may know from like the Sisterhood of Traveling Pants. And the whole show is set in Stars Hollow, Connecticut, which isn't actually a town that exists. But the creator, Amy Sherman Palladino, she created the first 6 seasons, and then there was some like industry drama around the 7th season, so a different showrunner took it on. But we'll talk about that once we get to season 7 and how that changes things going forward. But yeah, she went to a town called Washington Depot, Connecticut, which, side note, I feel like somewhere called Washington Depot should be, I don't know, Washington, but that's my soapbox. But Washington Depot was a small town, like only a couple thousand people, and that's where she got the idea for Stars Hollow. And then she pitched the idea to the creative directors, and then she was like, what if it was a show about a mother and daughter? And then that's how the Gilmore Girls were born. It first aired in October 5th of 2000 on the WB. And then for season 7, after it was changed, they moved the show to the CW. So the premise of the show is Lorelai, when she was 16, gave birth to Rory. Well, Lorelai Gilmore the second, I guess. I guess not junior, because she's a woman, and I don't know if I'm gonna be honest. But and then after that, she ran away from her parents into Stars Hollow, where she worked her way up to become the general manager of an inn. And her dream is to open her own inn. And Rory, this episode, she gets accepted to a private school. And it follows her years at that private school, Chilton. And in order to pay for that, Lorelai needs to become more in contact with her parents, who are still upset with her about running away when she first had Rory. And that's Richard and Emily Gilmore. And they're not as important as Lorelai and Rory to the plot, but they're the secondary characters in that regard. Those are played by Kelly Bishop and Edward Herman. But for some reason with Edward Herman, when they do like the intro, he's listed as special appearances by Edward Herman, but he's pretty much in every episode. So I don't really know what the whole special appearance thing is about, but yeah. Other main characters are Kiko Agena, who plays Lane Kim, Rory's best friend, and we're going to get into her. Lane is the best character in the show. Scott Patterson plays Luke Danes, owner of a local inn and later on Lorelai's love interest. And Melissa McCarthy, who you may know from like her own show and other appearances she made, plays Suki St. James, Lorelai's best friend and the chef at the inn. Okay. So starting with the episode, it opens with this like wide panning shot of Stars Hollow, which I feel like importantly sets everything up because there's people walking around, there's hustle and bustle. It isn't a sleepy town, and you can feel how connected everyone is. Another thing to note is the town, though, is different in the pilot episode. It's a different town, it's a different set. And that's actually a lot of sets are different in the first episode. I'll point those out as I see them. But then it goes to Lorelai Gilmore, the senior, walking into Luke's diner. And it's not just Luke's diner. The diner's called Luke's Diner. But they have like a witty dialogue about how much like coffee she drinks, and it really shows you just how connected Luke and Lorelai are and how well they know each other. Which we do have to wait like 4 seasons for anything to happen in that regard, but they're still really good friends even when they're not together. Also, the coffee addiction is again a central tenet to Lorelai's character and Rory's character as a result of being raised by Lorelai. The whole thing is she had 4 cups of coffee, but she went to Luke's because she wanted Luke's coffee specifically. Alexis Bledel, the actor for Rory, actually hates coffee, so she was drinking Coke the entire show in coffee mugs, which it's funny now, but when I first learned that information, my entire childhood was just ruined. Never recovered truly from that. So then this man comes up to Lorelai and just starts hitting on her while she's getting coffee, which men do not hit on people when they're just trying to get their coffee in the morning. That is like the time when I don't want to get hit on. I'm going to be so honest with you. But then she starts making like pop culture reference, which another central tenet of the show is the girls make a bunch of pop culture references. And only a few people actually get them, like Lane and Suki and Luke occasionally. But it's usually just banter between the girls that people actually understand their pop culture references. Okay, but then Rory walks in and she meets up with Lorelai, and it isn't mentioned that she's her daughter yet. And I think that's very specific because at the time, the whole teen pregnancy wasn't as big of an issue as it is now, and it was very heavily stigmatized. People never would assume that because it's not something that happened in the light of day, I guess. So when people see her in the show, they don't immediately assume that Rory is Lorelai's daughter. And they don't see it that way. And they're all thrown off by the fact that Lorelai, who's only 32, has a 16-year-old daughter. That's besides the point. But then the guy starts hitting on Rory. And then they kind of like insult him together about like him hitting on her daughter and her. And it's just one of those early moments that set up just how connected the girls are. Because they are mother and daughter, but the point of the show really is that they're more than that. They're also each other's best friends. And that comes from the fact that they only had each other for those 16 years. And it's also made abundantly clear in this scene that Rory is the more mature of the Gilmore Girls, despite the fact that she is the daughter. And it's established through this bit about makeup. And Rory needed lip gloss, and Lorelai only had these weird flavors or color changing lip gloss and all this like generally kiddish makeup, if that makes sense. But Rory just wants normal lip gloss, and it establishes that Rory is the practical one while Lorelai is more carefree. I want to say Lorelai is immature. I would just say she's more childlike, I guess is the word I would put it. Okay, then we go to another central tenet of the show. The intro. It's Where You Lead by Carole King. I would put a clip in here, but I do not need the copyright police taking down my first episode. That would be very embarrassing. But anyways, it's Where You Lead by Carole King. And she sings it with her own daughter. And I'm going to be so honest. The first season and a half, I thought it was Lorelai and Rory singing. Like Alexis and Lauren, but it isn't. And the intro is just, it's like Christmas music, but for fall, if that makes any sense to any of you, which it probably won't, but that's besides the point. It's just like a fuzzy blanket of a song. And the intro, like all the clips they use and the way they put it together is just really homey. It's a homey feeling. Anyways, then we go on to the second scene, which shows us the Independence Inn, which is where Lorelai works. And again, it's a different set. The Independence Inn is a different set than it is later. Lorelai is the owner. Well, not the owner of the inn. She's the manager of the inn. And in this episode, she's dressed like really formally and like a pencil skirt and all that, which I guess it makes sense for them like showing that she was the manager. But in later episodes, she does not dress like that. I mean, sure, there's a bit of formality because, of course, it's the place of her work, but she's dressed a little less businessy in later episodes. And then we meet another character, Michelle, who he's the concierge for the inn. He's French and he's angry. Not like anger issues angry. He's just kind of pissed off at all moments. And I kind of really love it. Like, he's just standoffish. And there's another character we'll meet in the second episode, Paris, who becomes what Michelle is to Lorelai to Rory, which is their angry friend. It's even mentioned in season 6, but it's her angry friend. They need someone with a little bit of just standoffishness, I guess, to balance out their bubbly personalities. Because, again, Rory may be more mature, but she's also bubbly and humorous. They both have very similar humors, the girls. And I think it's because they only had each other for those 16 years. I mean, sure, Lorelai had other friends, but family-wise, it was just them. And then they have a harp player come in, and I think she's in a couple of episodes in season 1, but I just realized this while I was doing research, is the actress who plays this harp player in the inn is literally Lois Griffin. It is the same woman who voices Lois Griffin. I feel like I'm the only one who's going to be excited about that. But also, the woman who was cast for Lois was originally going to be Suki. Like, she was going to be Suki, but then Melissa McCarthy got the role. And then Rory shows up at the inn, and everyone knows Rory. Suki and Michelle are the only characters at the end we really talk to in this episode, but they know Rory, and it's clear that they at least like Rory. I mean, Michelle may be standoffish, but he does help Rory with her French homework. And Suki adores the girl, and we see that immediately. And then later we learn she works at the inn occasionally, which I don't really know how that works, because she's not employed. She just kind of shows up. And nepotism. It's nepotism. I love them. I love the girls. But it's nepotism. And we learned this in later seasons, but the inn is actually where Lorelai went after she ran away from her parents. There was a shack behind the inn, and I know I'm making it sound like a horror movie, but it's a cute little shack. It's a cute little shack. And that's where her and Rory set up their first apartment. Okay, then we transition into the third scene, which introduces the amazing, the spectacular, the pivotal, the underrated, the harassed by the writers, Lane Kim. She is the best character in the entire show. I will die on that hill. She is the best character in the entire show. So, her storyline is about the fact that her parents came from Korea, and they are Seventh-day Adventists, and they're very, very into their religion. But Lane is a musician, and she's into rock music and American pop culture, and her parents hate that, so she hides that side from them. She has under her floorboards CDs and all that stuff, and we'll talk about that later. But a central part of her character is that her parents don't understand that. They want her to be a Seventh-day Adventist, and they want her to marry a Korean doctor. And that sounds kind of racist on my part, but that is quite literally her storyline in the first episode. She's going on a hayride with a Korean doctor because her parents want her to. But she's also, Rory's best friend. And the way that she interacts with Rory is very similar to the way that Lorelai interacts with Suki. And you'll see that later. But then Dean sees Rory. Dean is the first of Rory's love interests in the show. And at first, he is okay-ish. He's not great. He's okay-ish. But over the seasons and over his time with Rory, you hate him. The entire fan base hates him. I'm going to be so honest right now. The entire fan base hates him. And it's justified. You'll see later. He should die. Respectfully. Anyway. Then they go to Stars Hollow High, which is where Rory goes to school. I guess Lane and Dean, not at this point, but later, also go to Stars Hollow High. But there's this scene with Rory, and they're all sitting in the classroom, and all the girls are like putting on nail polish or something, and they see her doing the assignment and make fun of her, which I get the point of the scene. I'm going to be honest, I get the point of the scene. It's the fact that she is actually studious, which establishes her getting into Chilton. But it just feels kind of sexist. Because, like, the guys are actually doing the assignment, but it's just the girls, like, putting on nail polish. It's vaguely sexist. In a way that the show isn't. Like, the show isn't, like, liberal, progressive, and I say that as a progressive liberal, but it's not sexist. Anyways, there's also a mention of Rory wanting to get into Harvard, which is an important part of her character arc in the first 4 seasons. Okay, then we go back to the inn, and it's in the kitchen this time. And there's Suki. She's making dinner because she's the chef for the inn, and she has like her hands still stitched up, and we just see her bumbling around and bumping into stuff. And she's established as a bit of a klutz in the first season, but it kind of fades with her character later. Like, I think other things just overtake the whole klutz bit. And I don't really know how to feel about that one, because I feel like that's something they could have kept in her character, but I don't really care that it's gone. But there's also this, like, cool sequence where she's running around and sauteing and doing a bunch of stuff, and then the cooks around her aren't actually cooking. They're just making sure she doesn't, like, burn something or knock something down or hurt herself. And it ends with Lorelai walking in and hitting her in the face with a frying pan. No, not hitting Lorelai. Hitting one of the cooks in the face. I said that so wrong. And that's on me. I'm going to be honest. And then Lorelai talks to her about opening their own inn. And that's... Getting into Harvard for Rory is opening her own inn for Lorelai. They happen about the same time. Well, not going to Harvard. I will explain that later. But it's her main goal for these seasons. It's what she wants. But it doesn't happen until season 4. And there's a lot of talk about it and a lot of circumstances that happen. And the first season especially that set that up. And then we go to the Kim house. And, house is a stretch. But, so Lorelai... Why am I saying Lorelai? I'm going to be so honest. I'm skitzing out at this point. Rory and Lane walk into the Kim house, and they make this implication about Miss Kim not knowing Rory too well. But in later seasons, it's established that Lane and Rory have known each other since they were in kindergarten. So it's the first episode, so I should give it more slack. But also, Kim's Antiques is the only set, I'm pretty sure, from the first season that actually stays the same. And I say antiques and not house because their house is an antique shop. Like, it's still technically, like, structurally a house, but it's just filled with antiques because they sell antiques there. I've said antiques way too many times in this one sentence. But then it's also, they mentioned that Miss Kim is a vegan, and that also is something that she kind of pushes onto Lane. And this sets up, like, the religious trauma. That might be pushing it a little far, I'm going to be honest. But the religious trauma that Lane gets. Yeah. Also, is it Miss Kim or Mrs. Kim? Because we don't actually ever see Mr. Kim. But also, if they're religious Seventh-day Adventists, and then shouldn't she be married if she has Lane? And she says that she doesn't trust unmarried women. I just really wish that we at any point see Mr. Kim. Anyways. So they go back to the inn, and Lorelai tells Suki that she just found out that Rory got accepted into Chilton, which I've mentioned it. It is this elite private school in Hartford, which is like 30 minutes away, but it's also where Richard and Emily live, and that's kind of important later on. But Lorelai wants her to go to private school because this will help get her into Harvard. And again, Harvard is Rory's central goal throughout these entire seasons. And also, Suki is the first character who isn't one of the girls who, in this scene, mentions the fact that they are so close. They are best friends, not just mother and daughter. And I think this one has less to do with the amount of time they had to spend together because they didn't have anybody else, but more to the fact that they are so close in age. Like, mothers and daughters are usually more than 16 years apart, which it doesn't sound like a lot of a difference between, like a 30-year-old having kids and a 16-year-old, but it is. It is because when Lorelai was raising Rory, for the most part, she was still a kid. I mean, she was in her 20s, but she was still a kid. But that's my soapbox. Ignore that laugh. I'm going to be so honest. So, and then it goes to Lorelai. She's calling the Chilton people, and she's telling them that she doesn't have the $50,000 to pay for it right away, because Lorelai isn't poor. She's not like broke, but people don't just have $15,000 just lying around. That's not a thing they do. Last time I checked, I don't have $15,000 lying around, and that's on period. And then she makes a joke about doing a bank job to the Chilton board, and they don't get it. It's just another case of them not getting the fact that the girls are sarcastic and they're funny. And then Suki comes over, and Lorelai and her are talking about solutions, and there's this sweet little moment where Suki's like, "Take anything I have, sell my car," which, the way she said it, it was genuine. Suki was genuinely willing to do whatever it takes to get Rory, who isn't her daughter, it's her best friend's daughter, to that school. And I think it's sweet. But then she mentions Richard and Emily for the first time. And she mentions that they could pay for it, which is the early way of telling us that they are loaded. Like, they're not just rich, they're loaded. Anyways, I'll mention that in the next couple of sections here. But I'm just going to be so honest. I hate rich people. They're kind of snobby. Like, rich people. Not wealthy people. Rich people. I'm talking has a mansion, has full-time maids, uses the word fiduciary unironically, has a second home in the Hamptons, or I think they have a second home in Martha's Vineyard, or whatever that is. I hate those kind of rich people. I hate the generational wealth kind of rich people. Hate is a strong word. I have a strong hatred for them. Hate is a strong word. It's the right word, but it's a strong word. Okay. And then Rory shows up in her skirt, and then Lorelai's like, "I'm going to hem it." And she makes it significantly shorter, as we see in the next episode. Not like mini skirt levels, but still. And this is actually one of those little moments that establish things later, because Lorelai later makes a dress for Rory while she goes to a dance. And this is just a way of us seeing that she can work with textiles in that way early on. It's a little thing, it's not some big impressive moment, but I think it's a tribute to the writers. Attributed to the writers and how far they're thinking ahead. And also, I gotta mention, the house is different. It's a different set. There's just a little step between the kitchen and the living room that isn't there. The living room itself is different, but the girls' rooms do stay the same. And then Rory makes this one joke about how she dressed for gym for the first time because she's about to leave Stars Hollow High. And she's like, and I realized I was right to stay away. Gym sucks. Which, real. I don't know one person who genuinely enjoys gym class. And if you do, you're a psychopath. I'm sorry. Seek help. But yeah. But later on, the girls also hate sports. And I love all these little moments where they're establishing things about the girls that are still prevalent in later seasons. And then they do this little shot of just the fireplace and all the pictures. And the first couple times I watched it, I was just like, oh, it's just pictures of Rory and Lorelai. That's just what they're doing. But I realized the more important bit about it is there are no pictures of Richard and Emily. And there are no pictures of Christopher. And y'all don't know who Christopher is yet, but that's going to come up soon. So they go to the... Not they. This is just Lorelai. Because Rory doesn't know about the money problems. But Lorelai goes to the Gilmore house, which I know I am beating this point like a dead horse. It is a different set than in the later seasons. Still a mansion. It's a mansion. But it's a different set. But also, the shift between Stars Hollow and the Gilmore house is so prevalent. Stars Hollow is bubbly, it's warm. It feels like family. Like all the people in Stars Hollow, they know each other and they're so connected. And the town itself is family. They're familial. But Richard and Emily don't have that connection to Lorelai. And instead, it brings this feeling of like dread. She's dreading seeing her parents. And not in the way that, oh, I don't want to see my parents, ugh, they're so boring way. In these people, they genuinely put me on edge kind of way. So then Emily comes to the door when Lorelai shows up, and she makes this snide remark about, oh, is it Christmas already? About Lorelai showing up, which it's kind of rude on Emily's part, but also it just establishes that they don't see each other outside of those, like, holidays, the Christmas and the Easter. They only see each other then. And then she comes in and Lorelai's like, oh, I'm here because I was just taking my business class. And then Emily is unaware of the fact that she's taking a business class in the college, which I feel like as a mother, you should know that about your daughter. You should know that she's going to college. Again, Emily gets me mad. Emily as a character gets me mad because she's just so snide and condescending. And she's just always attacking Lorelai. And then she just gets on Lorelai and blames her for all that went down between them and for her getting pregnant and for her leaving. And yes, Lorelai is at fault for those things. Not entirely, but it is Lorelai's fault that she got pregnant. And it is Lorelai's decision that she left. But these things are just like a side effect of the way that Lorelai was raised and the way she was treated growing up. That's just my soapbox. I've said that so many times, and most people don't know what that phrase means. So I'm just gonna... It's like, this is my opinion. This is just my opinion. That's what I'm saying. So then Richard shows up, which is Lorelai's father, Emily's husband, and he makes the exact same comment, which, again, equally is rude on his part. But this time, this goes to show how connected Emily and Richard are. And then Lorelai mentions that, hey, Rory got into Chilton. And then they actually show interest for the first time in this entire interaction, which they should take as much interest in their daughter's life as they take in their granddaughter's. And I think it is because Rory does want to go to Harvard. It's because Rory does want to go to an Ivy League school. It's because they see Rory as a second chance. They see Rory as a second Lorelai. There's also this difference between the way that Richard and Lorelai's relationship is bad and the way that Emily and Lorelai's relationship is bad. And it's a difference between negligence and intent, I guess is the way I always put it. Richard is apathetic. He doesn't care about Lorelai's life. Emily is combative. She's attacking Lorelai. And both are bad, but one point in Richard's favor is when Lorelai eventually does ask for the money for school, he's going to give it to her, no strings attached. Mostly because he cares about Rory, but he's still going to give it to Lorelai, no string attached. Emily then decides that if Lorelai wants this money, she has to come to their house every Friday and have dinner. Which, I know, most people are like, oh, dinner with your parents. It's not like that big of a deal. But when someone treats you badly for your entire life, you dread having to spend any amount of time with them. That includes a dinner every Friday. And they say it's because they aren't involved in Lorelai's life, but they hate Lorelai's life. They don't hate Lorelai, at least not openly. But they hate that she isn't them. She hates that she isn't rich like them, that she doesn't want the life that they want. And she appreciates this blue-collar life that she has. And they show disdain for blue-collar lives. At least later in this episode, I'll bring it up. And then Lorelai agrees to do this, which is a testament to how much she loves Rory, because she's willing to do this for her. But she adds her own string in that Rory can't know that she's borrowing money from them. And I don't think it's because she's ashamed. I think it's because she doesn't want Rory to worry, which is a testament to how much Rory cares for Lorelai and how close they are. So then it's Stars Hollow High again, and it's Rory cleaning out her locker. And then Dean shows up, and Rory makes this reference to Rosemary's Baby. Oh my god, great movie. I'm going to go on a tangent here. I love Rosemary's Baby. It's just so weird. It's a weird film. And it's a little freaky. It's a little quirky. And I love that movie. It's so underrated. It's the pinnacle of the 60s. And I don't know. Like, the whole, supernatural element I find really good. And I love Mia Farrow's performance in it. Great movie. Tangent over. But anyway, she makes a reference to Rosemary's Baby. And Dean actually gets it. But in later episodes, he doesn't get her pop culture references as much. And I think it's supposed to show that Dean and Rory get each other, but they really don't because they've just met. I don't know. And then he asks about Rory's name, and this is the first time that Rory mentions the fact that she was in fact named after Lorelai. Rory is just a nickname to not confuse them. And naming your children after you, I have opinions on. And yes, this will be my second tangent for literally just this scene. But if you bring a whole new life into this world, a whole new separate human being, and you decide, you know what, I'm going to name it after myself. This one is going to be me, again. It's at least a little narcissistic. It's oh, I'm so important I should exist again. My name should be carried on again. Let me name this newborn human me. I just don't like it. I'm going to be honest. And then Dean mentions that he needs to get a job. And then Lorelai... Oh my god, I keep getting the girls confused today. I promise I will get better at it. Rory mentions Miss Patty, who she runs the dance studio, and she's known as the town's gossip. She is more involved in the show in later episodes, and I really like her as a character. She's an ex-Broadway star, and she always makes references about all the people she's met in her travels as a performer. And it's just a really cool character. And then there's this little thing, which is another central tenet of the show. The la-las. And The people who haven't seen the show aren't gonna get this, but the people who have know what I'm talking about. They do these little like music bits where it's like la 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 la, and then there's la da 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 da. And people who haven't seen the show are gonna be like, "What is he on? Like, what did he just do? That's so weird." But the people who've seen the show get it, and whenever there's like these moments, it just makes the sound, the la la la, and I just love it. It really sets the atmosphere for the show. But again, the people who haven't seen the show are going to be like, "Oh, that's cringe." But the people who do are going to get it, and I respect that. And then, also, who do you think like sings those? Like, I guess I could look it up, but I feel like I kind of like the mystery. But also, like, I imagine the hiring process for that would be weird. Like, we're making a show, and we need you to go la la la. I'm not a singer. I'm going to be honest. But anyway. Also, those who've seen the show, am I the only one who finds myself doing it? Like, I'll be, like, doing the dishes, or, like, just sitting outside, like, reading a book, and I'll do la la, la da 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 da. That's a new one. Well, that's a different one. You're welcome, guys. Also, I think this scene being after the Gilmores is an additional part of the whole, like, the difference between the Gilmore house and Stars Hollow. Stars Hollow is Rory and Lorelai's, like, first family. This is their true family. And at this point, Richard and Emily aren't really family to them. And then she also mentioned that she's born in Hartford, which isn't really, like, that important of a thing, but I don't know. It shows that, like, Lorelai leaving is after Rory's birth, which is confirmed later, but I feel like it's important that this is just, like, established. And then there's another sign of Dean being an absolute terrible person. Rory's, I did it again, Rory is like, "Oh, why did you come up to me?" And he's like, "Oh, I've been watching you." Which, girl, if a man says he's been watching you, run. Leave. Immediately. That is stalker behavior. That is the red flag to beat all red flags, honey. Like, he's a creep. Like, Sugar, he's a creep. I don't know why I said Sugar. I'm not Southern. And this just further solidifies my Dean hatred. Like, again, at this point, while first watching it, I didn't, like, hate Dean. But this is another part of that Dean hatred. Okay, then they go to Luke's, the girls. And then Lorelai tells Rory, "Oh, we're going to see your grandparents this weekend." And she's like, "Is it Easter already?" Which, I know it's the same thing that Emily and Richard said, but she didn't say it in the same way. It's just, I guess, like, a more humorous way of saying it. But also, Rory is on edge because she's about to tell Lorelai that she doesn't want to go to Chilton, which... But before any of that happens, I'm getting ahead of myself. Luke shows up, and he's like... He makes a snide comment about their diets, which he does on occasion. And it's not in, like a fat-shaming way. I need to establish that Luke is not that guy. He's not fat-shaming them. He's just like, "Oh, you guys are unhealthy. You were gonna die." But then also, like, he still gives them the food. And he still owns the diner. Like, you own a diner. Like, come off it. Like, I love you. I love you, Luke. You're a great character. And you and Lorelai are my OTP. But, like, come off it. And then Rory is just mad at Lorelai for no reason. And I don't even get it. Like, she needs to come off it more than Luke does. Let's be honest. And then, I don't know why I did that. Half of this episode is just going to be me saying, I don't know why I did that. I'm figuring it out. I'm figuring this out. I'm going to be so honest. Again, that's also something I've been saying a lot in this episode. I will be less repetitive in future episodes. Promise. Okay, where was I? I literally just sidetracked myself. My powers of distraction are incredible. And then she mentions that she doesn't want to go to Chilton. And it's clearly established that it's because of Dean. Which, ugh. But anyways, she says it's because they don't have the money for it. Which, come off it. The sequel. Come off it reloaded. Okay, but then they're walking home after this, and Miss Patty is like, oh, I have found a job for your male friend. And that's what tells Lorelai Rory is going to quit because of Dean. It's what tells her that is why. And then they go home after making a FloJo reference, which it's crazy how they can just go from, hey, Rosemary's Baby reference to let's reference this one very specific track and field star. But again, besides the point. Again, this is the first time when someone besides Dean gets the references, and Dean doesn't get them later, so it doesn't count. And it's because it's them. Even when they're in a fight, they're still so connected. And then Lorelai says something that establishes, like, a lot more about her character when she's like, of course you're going to throw away this important life decision because of a guy. You are my daughter. You are so much like me. And it's like, it drops the bomb that, yeah, she got knocked up at 16 and it wasn't intentional. It was an accident, which, I mean, of course it was. She was 16. But she's like, I don't know. She's remorseful about it. Not about having Rory. She mentions later when people bring it up that she is not sorry about getting pregnant because she has Rory. But she is... It's timing. Like, no one wants to get pregnant at 16, let's be honest. Okay, that soapbox is over. And then they both go to their own rooms to, like, just decompress after this fight. And they put on the same song, which is just another way of how they're so connected. They put on the same exact song to cheer themselves up. But then Lorelai comes back to Rory's room and she's like, and she openly admits Rory is a sensible one. And Rory is just so mean in this episode in a way that she isn't later. She's so mean to Lorelai for no reason. And then Lorelai says, yes, this house has been a democracy for as long as you've been alive. They made decisions together, which I feel like it's at least a little bit of bad parenting. Like, yes, you should do things that are in the best interest of your daughter, but also as a parent, sometimes you got to be the one making the decisions. But this is what she says is the first time she's ever had to pull the mom card and tell Rory, yes, you are doing this. You are going to Chilton because I'm not letting you throw away your future. And again, good time to pull it out. But no matter how close you are with your daughter, you should at least be making the decisions some of the time. I don't know. I act like I have kids. I act like I'm some, like, seasoned soccer mom. I'm a 16-year-old boy. Like, I don't know. I don't know much about parenting, I'm going to be honest. Okay, then it's the next morning, and Lorelai's just talking to Suki about the fight that they had. And she's like, this is the first time that me and Rory have really fought. And I don't know why this is the time I'm bringing it up, but this is the other central tenet of the show. It's like the intro, the dynamic between the girls, the la-las, and the way that they talk. And the thing is, when they talk in this show, it isn't like characters in a TV show talking. It's like two people just having a conversation and you just happen to be watching. The girls and the characters who aren't them, they stutter and they stammer and they add weird pauses, and not in an off-putting way, in a way that sounds natural to someone speaking. Like, it doesn't sound like acting, it just sounds like they're talking, and I like that. It makes you feel more connected to the show. Okay, then the aforementioned Friday night dinner happens. They're standing at the door, and both of them mention they don't want to go in. Like, Rory who doesn't have the same past with the Gilmores that Lorelai doesn't want to go in either. I think that's just a testament to how bad the relationship has gotten between them. And then Richard comes to open the door, which sounds like, oh yeah, someone goes open their own door. It's big news. Get out the trumpets, I know. But in every other episode, unless there's an explanation for it, a maid comes get the door. Because they're the type of people who just have maids. Gross. Then Emily makes a snide remark about the coffee cup that Lorelai has in her hands, which Emily hating coffee makes sense because Lorelai loves it. And again, they don't connect. And then Emily immediately goes to Rory and asks her about her schooling and about her getting accepted to Chilton. And it's so off-putting the way she ignores her own daughter to go talk to her granddaughter. And it's just, And then they're sitting in the foyer and Emily makes this thing about how education is the most important thing in life. Well, after family... And then, Lorelai makes this joke about pie. And, they're off-put by it. But it's just a joke about pie. It's not that deep. And it's just they don't even get the girl's humor. And they get it less than everyone else does. Because they're just so disconnected from them. And then Richard, when they're at dinner, Richard is like, oh, how's the motel you work at? She works at an inn. And she's very successful at it. She's a very successful runner of an inn, and I think it's just so disrespectful the way he dismisses the work she does. And it just shows how they don't get blue-collar life. They don't respect it because it isn't money. It isn't old money like they are. And then Lorelai brushes past it because, again, she's trying to get through this dinner. But then, on some other mad shit, I might have to censor that. On some other mad stuff, he's like, speaking of, Rory's so smart, she must get it from her dad. Which, it's later established that Christopher, Rory's father, I've been avoiding mentioning him for this bit, he ain't got no job. He ain't got no job. Was that Billie Eilish said? He ain't got no job. It's just... we don't even see him, but it's just they mentioned about his tech startup. When he shows up in episode 13, and yes, we'll talk about him showing up in episode 13 later, but when he shows up, he ain't got no job. He ain't got no job, chat. In the famous words of Miss Billie Eilish, he ain't got no job. So I don't know what Richard talking about him being a successful businessman and Rory getting her smarts from him. Lorelai is an actual businesswoman. Let's get that so clear. She runs an inn. Let's get so clear. Christopher is a dumb bitch. I'm probably going to have to censor that out later. Y'all will know. So I don't know why he's trying to diss on Lorelai's name when she's the one who actually has a career. But that's besides the point. And then, Emily and Lorelai go off during the kitchen, which is the only time Emily ever gets in the kitchen because she hates her maids. It's a whole thing. But then Emily is mad at Lorelai because Lorelai didn't want to get married to Christopher. But y'all, they were 16. What in Emily's mind thinks, yeah, I'm going to make my 16-year-old daughter get married to her baby daddy? What goes on in that woman's mind? Let's be so for real. Wild. And then this also brings up a point that isn't really expressly stated in the series, but it's very obvious that the Gilmores are so conservative. They wanted them to get married. That's just part of it. And then there's this one scene later on where Lorelai makes a joke in 20 years, I'm going to register register Democrat. And that's her way of rebelling. I guess y'all see that in that episode. And then Lorelai makes this comment. Emily makes this comment about Lorelai, where she's about her being a maid because when she left them originally, she went and worked as a maid at the Independence Inn. And this is just more of that point I was talking about, them hating the working class because they're rich and white. Like, be so for real. Y'all couldn't work a day in your life as a maid. Okay. So then the girls leave for dinner and they go back to Luke's, which they always do after Friday night dinners, which I find hilarious. Because imagine like going to like this fancy dinner with your parents and then going to the local diner right after. It's wild. I love it. But then her and Rory like work out their business, and Rory decides that she is going to go to Chillin because she's not going to throw her life away for a man. And yeah. And that's on period. And then there's Luke makes this comment about you don't want to go up to be like your mother. And then Rory says like, oops, too late, which I think is her way of dismissing the comment that Richard made earlier about her getting her smarts from Christopher. And then there's also this thing about like Luke was like clean shaven and then Lorelai's thrown aback by it. And this is those first sweet hints of Luke and Lorelai that we have to wait 5 seasons to pay off. That's the end of the episode, so we will now transition to my closing thoughts. I would say I love episode 1 of Gilmore Girls, but it is maybe the weakest episode because it needs to establish a bunch of things. I think that truly the show becomes amazing at episode 2. It's just great at episode 1, but it's amazing at episode 2. Also, I think that the whole like the sets being different thing is a side effect of it being the pilot. Like, I think it's the pilot, so they weren't going to go and buy a bunch of new sets to film things on. That's why the diner and the town and Lorelai's house all look different than they do from episode 2 forward. Okay. That's all of my thoughts with this episode. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, because this will be on YouTube and I have to plug because I am shameless. And I'll see y'all next week. Actually, 2 weeks. I'm going to say 2 weeks. You'll know if that's jiffin if you see me next week.